Here's Ted Cruz's tweet. Right now, everyone is horrified watching the LA wildfires. In today's episode of Verdict, we break down the catastrophic policy decisions made by Gavin Newsom and LA Mayor Karen Bass. While the wildfires were still raging in Los Angeles, while I was standing on my roof in LA, spraying down my house with a hose to make sure that my house wouldn't set on fire when the fire was down the street within 1 mile of my house.
Did you listen to the show?
And so Ted Cruz decided to come out and make make his entire episode, which, by the way, there is not.
So I'll tell you what we said, because I was on that show.
Excuse me, let him finish. We were crying so much about Bill Irving. Let him finish.
I know.
In this video, Tyler Cohen humiliates this right-winger for his delusional takes on Piers Morgan. And things kick off with Brian describing, in real-time detail, how the LA wildfires have gotten so close to his home that he was literally standing on his roof, hosing it down to keep it from catching fire. And while he's explaining all this, Ben Ferguson just cuts in trying to defend the very show that used Brian's nightmare scenario to push right-wing talking points. And Brian's not even finished making his point, and Ben's already jumping in with, well, I was on that show, trying to act like the real problem is Brian calling it out. And Destiny even chimes in here, totally fed up, like, dude, just let him talk. You're already crying about that. And you're gonna already tell this is gonna get messy real fast. Brian's just trying to lay out how terrifying the wildfires were, and this guy just immediately goes into spin mode to defend Ted Cruz and conservative media. It's a masterclass in gaslighting, and Brian is just not having it with him. So make sure to watch to the end to see how Tyler Cohen humiliates this right-winger for his delusional takes on Piers Morgan.
Ben is arguing for Destiny.
You said we did a show. You're putting words in our mouth of something we didn't say.
I read the tweet verbatim. That's
did
what I did.
You listen to the show? No,
did you read the book?
I'll tell you what we did.
Did you watch the Lifetime movie? Did you see the documentary?
What we did was we talked about the decisions that were made.
There's not a situation where Ted Cruz will not.
Well, let Ben say what he thinks he said. Let's listen to Ben.
I'll redo the show in a very quick form. What we talked about were the decisions that were made with underbrush not being cleared out and the massive warnings that were coming. We also talked about what the fire chief said about those warnings. We talked about the lack of water pressure. We talked about them cleaning up some of the holding tanks. We talked about also the fact that there were certain things that were done to save fish over having the ability to fight these types of fires and everything that went into it. We talked about the decisions that were made that then made for a poor response that made you have to be on your roof, as you described it, spraying down because there wasn't adequate decisions that were made with those winds that came through with the underbrush.
You think the reason that I was on my roof was because while the Santa Ana winds were ripping through LA at 100 miles per hour and 50,000 acres of LA were burning, that some bogus fucking story about the smelt, about Delta smelt is why LA was burning? You're a joke, bro. You have no idea what you were talking about. You have no idea what you're talking about.
I'm quoting the people in your government in California.
There is no amount of water pressure in the world through these hydrants that are going to be able to put out 50,000 acres of fire. Yes, you did. You're talking about smelt and you're talking about no water pressure.
I didn't say that. If you turn on every hydrant, you know this. You lose water pressure. That's not what I said, by the way.
Let me grant you the larger point, though, and I think the point that you're trying to make, I'll grant you this, even though you don't deserve it, and you're just going to spew a bunch of bullshit about smelt and water pressure.
Please don't give me any charity, okay, brother?
But let me grant you the larger point and say that there are still things that people could do. And I'm not here to argue that California did a perfect job or does a perfect job with regard to how they manage all of this stuff. But to that point, then, do you think it's maybe a little stupid that Trump would fire 10% of NOAA's workforce, which is about 1,300 staffers and researchers? Do you think it's a good idea, then, that Trump called for reducing NOAA's workforce by a further 17%, which would be another 2,000 staffers and researchers? Do you think it's a good idea that Trump slashed 20% of FEMA's workforce?
Yeah,
do you think it's a smart idea to phase out FEMA completely? Do you think it's a smart idea that 25% of NWS's stations lack a meteorologist?
So the second Brian tries to get real about what actually happened, literally describing how he was on his own roof with a hose while wildfires were ripping through LA, Ben just jumps in and starts nitpicking over what was actually said in Ted Cruz's podcast. And that's already where the whole thing just starts falling apart. You've got a guy recounting a very terrifying moment, and instead of listening or even showing the slightest of interest and respect, Ben just turns it into a technicality war over whether Brian listened to the full episode. And that's when Destiny steps in, rightfully annoyed, and tells Ben to chill and let Brian finish. Because seriously, Ben's over here crying about being misrepresented while doing exactly that to Brian. It's just pure performative outrage, and everyone watching can see it. And once Ben finally does get his chance to talk, man, he just goes off. He hits this rapid fire rant about underbrush, fire chiefs, water pressure, holding tanks, fish, and something about delta smelt. And it all just sounds like Wildfire TED Talk ghost written by Fox News. That's when Brian just snaps, because really, the reason he was on his roof fighting off fire wasn't a climate emergency, it was a smelt. Brian just calls it exactly what it is. Just straight up BS. And at that point, Ben's whole argument just starts collapsing because he knows the more he talks, the more obvious it gets that he has no clue what he's actually defending.
All of this stuff is
so let's go back to the basics here. If you're asking about the size of government and the president making a decision to reduce the size of government when it makes sense, I have no issue with that. By the way, the staffing and the lies that were put out by many on the left and the media was that there was understaffing when it came to the warnings that were coming out from the National Weather Service. That was a lie. They were staffed above normal staffing levels. They held people over the day before and the night of the storm in Texas. They had double the staff on staff when the storms were hitting. There's a timeline of all the texts that were going out and the warnings that were going out. And so you're acting as if Donald Trump caused a problem with the flood and the response to it in the warning system, which is a lie. When you have double the staff, which is the protocol, by the way, under Obama, under Biden, and under George Bush. So this is nonpartisan, and everyone showed up for work, and people were held over. You're now just trying to score political points on the lives of dead children for political reasons.
Okay, let me ask.
Hang on.
Let me bring in Natalie because she should be waiting patiently. Natalie, when I read out what Destiny posted there, what was your feeling about that?
Well, I think that's probably the textbook definition of what it means to be a grifter, trying to profit off of dead children by pumping NordVPN and your promo code. It's reprehensible. I'm pretty sure you're an atheist. You don't believe in God. You certainly don't believe in traditional marriage. So I would expect nothing less that you would double down and defend it. Blows my mind. I mean, I agree comedy's important, but I don't think, no offense, maybe shouldn't be a stand-up comedian if you want to start your career by posting about dead children. It's really not all that funny. And it really wasn't even a joke. You were trying to profit off of it. So I think that's sort of a compounding evilness to what you did.
What do we do, Natalie?
So real quick, for compounding evilness, just so I could read this because it's entered into the record, okay? I'm just curious if Ben wants to say, is this quote fake, okay? So there's hundreds of these quotes, all right? At a county meeting, okay, where the citizens are giving feedback on whether or not they should use the American Rescue Plan funds, all right? Citizen Mr. R says, there's not just a lack of transparency, but the Biden administration is pulling the wool over our eyes. If we see what's actually written, we make a clear decision. This is wrong. Texas has been going in the right direction. I moved from Washington State a year ago. Washington is just falling lockstep with whatever this admin wants to do, and we're watching with clarity the damage. As far as COVID and the recovery money, the majority of the damage has been caused by the government. We're doing well. I'm a retired firefighter, EMS. I love law enforcement. So do no harm is going by the wayside. Let me finish one more sentence. Do no harm is going by the wayside from, we're all familiar with that and it's heartfelt, but it's going by the wayside for now. What would be money that would go against everything that we believe, whatever good is in it, I don't want it. Are you telling me that comment and the hundreds of others like it are fake? Can you give me a yes or no before you ramble about whatever irrelevant stuff is? Are those comments fake?
Alright, so Ben's next move here is to do what conservatives always do when they're cornered on policy. Just pivot straight to the size of government. He just tries to make this whole thing about shrinking bureaucracy, like it's just a numbers game. And sure, that argument sounds clean if you're not paying attention, but Brian already explained how the cuts directly undermine climate prep, FEMA, NOAA, all the stuff you need functioning in the crises. But then Ben just goes even harder in the gaslight lane. He claims that not only were there no staff shortages, but that the left lied about it. He insists that the National Weather Service was overstaffed and had people held over, and basically that everything was perfect. Like, bro, if you believe that, then what exactly were you blaming California's wildfire failures on a second ago? Pick a lane. And just when you think that Deflection couldn't get any worse, Piers tosses it to Natalie, and man, Natalie just goes off. She skips the actual topic entirely. Like, what even is that? She throws in that he's an atheist, and that he doesn't believe in marriage, just throwing the entire right-wing culture war kitchen sink at him instead of dealing with the actual issue. And just when you think the deflection couldn't get any worse, Piers tosses it to Natalie, and yeah, she goes off. Now look, let's be real here. Destiny's post was in bad taste. Joking about dead kids with a promo code, even sarcastically, is just a terrible move. Like, nobody's defending the post itself. But instead of addressing it with any level of nuance, Natalie just launches into a full-on moral crusade. She just skips over the actual conversation and just turns it into this personal takedown. He's an atheist, he doesn't believe in marriage, he's a grifter. It's just a whole right-wing culture war playbook thrown at him all at once. And that's the thing. Instead of sticking to an actual legit critique of the post, she just tries to paint Destiny as some kind of irredeemable villain. It's not even about the post anymore. It's about discrediting him as a person. It's just petty and performative, and it's not helping anybody out.
I'm going to go back to what I want to say. You said what you said. I'm going to say it.
Answer.
Number one,
yeah, this is why you debate kids on college
I'm
campuses,
answering
right?
the damn question, dude. Like, just chill for a second. Drink whatever hemp juice or that is, okay?
Yeah, keep going.
All right.
Yep.
So number one, that's one person. Number two, if you weren't so dumb, if you weren't so dumb, if you weren't
go scroll down and find another one if you want.
If you weren't good, you found two. If you weren't so dumb, go Google the size.
You think they don't exist?
Go Google the size of the Comfort, Texas City Hall. You can't fit hundreds of people in any meeting there, you moron. You found one. You act like there's thousands that showed up. They did not show up and say that on the record. Are there people that said things on the internet?
And then the people
there are
can
some.
go out.
But if you look at how small
you
the
can bring
community
5 in
is,
and 5 out. If you see a room that can only fit 10 people, did you know that 100 people can fit in that room if 10 go in and 10 leave?
I do.
Do we forget this now? We don't.
Again, if you understood the size of the town, which you don't because you don't care because you're literally trying to make money off of dead people.
You're the one who's
Texas.
getting kids
you
killed,
would
and
know
I can't wait for the
that
next
this is an insane thing that you're saying.
Texas.
You
the
moron.
next time the power grid freezes, the next time another flood happens, and dipshits like you are up here saying,
it's
could we have ever seen it
to
coming?
Make a living
but hey, you know what? At least
online.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is out here proposing legislation to stop the Jews from putting clouds in the sky. So thank God we have you guys working hard on the problem, okay, to stop the weather modification program from Bill Gates. Thank
you stay up till 3 a.m. and watch the internet?
Thank you, God. Thank you, God.
And yeah, by the end of it, Ben's just completely unraveling. He dodges Destiny's question again, hurls personal insults, mocks town hall sizes, and basically just tries to shout over the facts with playground level jabs. And meanwhile, Destiny's just over here mentioning that line about Marjorie Taylor Greene and weather control. Because at this point, that's exactly the level of brain rot we're dealing with. You've got Ben melting down, Natalie moralizing from a soapbox, and Brian laying out actual facts about fire, funding, and federal cuts. And somehow they're the ones being accused of profiting off tragedy, which, to be honest, can be said about Destiny's post. It's the same pattern every time. They avoid accountability, redirect the blame, and when called out with receipts, they just lash out. It's not about helping victims or preventing the next crisis. It's just about scoring points and selling the illusion that they're the responsible ones. But when the grid falls or the next disaster hits, they'll be back on camera pretending they never saw it coming. Isn't it wild how the loudest people always seem to be the most wrong, and yet they're the ones who get the mic, get the headlines, and get treated like truth tellers? The bias isn't just in what gets said, it's in who's allowed to say it. And speaking of biases, are you getting tired of getting news from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing, and another says the complete opposite? How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, whether it's left, right, or center, are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get a 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights in media bias and political trends. So stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.